Have you ever seen an astrologer whose predictions have 100% come true? Have you ever met a stock market trader who has had success on every one of his and her calls? The answer is obviously a no. You see, predicting the future, decoding the future is fraught with uncertainty. As Peter Drucker has famously said, predicting the future, decoding the future is like driving a car on country roads in the night without lights and looking outside the back window. That's what we're going to try and attempt to do. So today I'm going to try and leave you with what I think are the skill sets and mindset that will help you brace for a future that is going to be extremely uncertain. I'm going to talk about 5 mantras around the innovation mindset, which I think is going to be critical for success in the future. And since we have a large Gen Z audience, I've taken the liberty of making it Gen Z friendly. For the others who don't understand, there's also an explanation. So we'll start off with the first mantra. Be a beta brain. Look beyond the obvious. Now, being a beta brain essentially means 3 things. The first is the 99% principle. The 99% principle essentially says that most CEOs, CXOs of organizations make the folly of assuming that their customer is obsessed with their product 99% of the time. You couldn't be further from the truth. Even if the consumer is thinking about your product for 0.999% of their lives, you're a huge winner. So the answer is companies who have understood what's bothering or going on in 99% of the consumers' lives and matching their product to that. Let's look at some examples. Nike, just do it, right? Nike doesn't necessarily only talk about their superior shoes. Nike has understood that its consumers essentially want to excel in sport. They want to push their mind limits, and they want a partner that tells them, go ahead and do the best that you can, reach your maximum potential. And that's why Nike is a brand which is very, very close to any sports enthusiast's heart, not only the Olympic athletes. Let's look at another brand, a brand that I come from, Starbucks. Starbucks started in 1971 in a small store called Pike Place in Seattle, and you wouldn't believe what they were selling. Tea, spices, and coffee bean. Yes, you heard that right. Tea and spices. Howard Schultz joined the organization in the early 1980s, and on one of his routine work trips to Italy, he saw these beautiful cafes in Italy which were buzzing with life. There were people, talking loudly, as is the Italian culture, interacting with the barista, having fun, and there was laughter coming out of those places. And he wondered, why can't we get this coffee culture in the United States? And from that was born the idea that Starbucks pioneered, which is called the third place. The place that is neither your home nor your office, but where you can be the best version of yourself. And the way we know Starbucks was actually born from this idea. So both of these companies and many other successful ones look at what's happening in the consumer's life and then dovetail their product into that. The second part of being a beta brain is to look at the macro signals. So you see STEEP analysis, which is essentially looking at social, political, economic, environmental, technological. The environment around us is constantly giving us signals. You have to be tuned to those signals to figure out what you can do and cannot do. Let's look at some examples. UPI, I think, is a fantastic example of recognizing that the number of Indians today that have a mobile phone is humongous. So why not use that and make a digital powerhouse? Paytm as a brand went one step further. They understood that consumers in this digital economy with phones want to make payments, but they're not sure of acceptability. The small retailer, the auto rickshaw guy, is not sure whether he or she will get paid. And they invented the Paytm soundbox. So they took a signal, a macro signal, which is digital, and they actually converted it into something that was a tangible product. Another example that I'd like to give you is of PepsiCo. Some years earlier, PepsiCo again latched onto a signal, a macro signal of wellness. They realized that consumers are now reading labels much more carefully, are far more attuned to wellness. And Indra Nooyi at that time completely pivoted the organization's purpose to say we will do performance with purpose. So we will have some better for you products in our landscape, and it was a complete organization pivot. Again, she took a signal from the environment, the entire team rallied around it. What signals do you want to take from the environment? The third aspect of being a beta brain is to look at trends. Now, what happens when we look at trends is that companies mostly look at trends only within their industry. And that's the biggest mistake you can make, because then you're getting into a cycle of incrementalism. You will never get into disruption. I'll give you an example. Some years ago, when I was a part of the Futures company, we were consulting for a large paint company, which essentially said, help us with the next big innovation idea. We, of course, did a lot of macro analysis. We looked at their consumers. But the secret sauce that we had is we said we will look at some categories which are completely not related to paints. And we looked at the beauty care category. And we found that the big trend in beauty was anti-aging. You see, women, even in their 20s, wanted to have anti-aging products because they didn't want the first sign of a wrinkle appearing. And we took inspiration from that and helped them develop the first anti-wrinkle or anti-aging paint, because walls expand and contract. And if the paint expands and contracts with the wall, you will always have a wall that is blemish-free. So that's my first mantra: be a beta brain. Look beyond the obvious. Let's go to the second mantra. The second mantra is ensure that your most successful product gets cooked. Okay? And this is inspired by the Blue Ocean Strategy. Some years ago, there was this book called the Blue Ocean Strategy. What it essentially says, in many markets and in the ocean, there are some spots where a lot of fish congregate and hunt, and that ocean becomes red. Analogy to markets, people are going behind the same consumer and discounting is happening. But the ocean is vast, markets are vast. Look for white spaces in the market. Look for the Blue Ocean Strategy. And that's where you will be able to make a huge, huge difference, right? There are many examples of this. So if you take the analogy to organizations, always have a team which is trying to kill your most successful product. Now, I don't mean this in a suicidal and a negative kind of way, but the fact is you have to be prepared for a future where your most successful product today is not going to exist in the next 10 years. Then what do? So have a team, a B team, which is really looking to kill your most successful product. Various organizations have done this. British American Tobacco, for example, realized that smoking is going down because the young consumer is far more concerned about health and wellness. So they pivoted from traditional cigarettes to vapes, tobacco-heated products, nicotine patches, and so on and so forth. And they created a pipeline so that their most successful product will still stay, but in the eventuality that things flip, it will be completely different. And look at the market capitalization of some of the biggest companies in the world today. Nvidia tops it. How many of us have even heard of Nvidia 10, 15 years ago, right? So have a B team kill your most successful product. That's the second mantra. The third mantra is take a loss, or intelligent, fast failure. Failure has become very negative nowadays, but I think if any person who's very successful tells you they've not failed, they are lying. Intelligent, fast failure is about having multiple experiments and projects at a very, very short pace of time to ensure that you eventually succeed. And I'll give you an interesting example. You have an example here of two companies who were given the same brief. They were told by the consumer, we want mobility. Company A on top wanted to make a car. So first it gave the customers one wheel, then two wheels with a chassis, and eventually a car. The customer was very happy in the end, but the customer was very unhappy throughout the process. Company B first gave the customer a pair of roller skates. The customer could move, mobility was ticked, then a cycle, then a motorcycle, and eventually a car. So you see what's happening here. Company B did not only assume mobility is equal to car. They took a lot of experiments and small projects and gave mobility at every stage. The result is the consumer is happy throughout the process. The result is the company has been able to also maximize its profit and reduce its risk. So intelligent, fast failure. And I always like to say, perfection is the enemy of progress. Do not wait for perfection. Take the plunge, take the risk. The fourth mantra is really setting the vibe or scenario planning. You know, when you're decoding the future, you can't plan for just one thing. You have to plan for a range of scenarios. How do you do that? You essentially look at the macro environment and list down all the factors that are important in the next 5 or 10 years. Again, going back to the steep or the pestle analogy. You look at consumers, what's changing in them, you look at your category, you make a list of all factors. Now, the problem that most companies make, the error most companies make, is they look at only the important factors. But scenario planning is successful when you look at the most important factors and also the most uncertain factors. Look at the most important and uncertain factors and create a range of scenarios. I'll again give you an example of Starbucks. I joined in 2019. We all know what happened in 2020. Business completely shut. So for a company that makes its revenue, 95% of its revenue with people coming into the store, enjoying their coffee, we could not sell anything. We were completely shut. And overnight, our business became 100% delivery. We were only, surviving because we could deliver coffee. And that's when we got into this whole scenario planning mode. And we did things which were never done earlier. So 2 things. One, complete innovation in product. For the first time, we launched a beverage which was a 1-liter beverage which customers can take home, because we knew they were not coming to the store as often and we didn't want them to venture out. People sometimes are crazy behind brands and they'll do crazy things. We didn't want them to venture out. We wanted them to enjoy their favorite beverages at home with their families. So the first time, 1-liter beverages, which it's almost like a family pack, right? Like an ice cream family pack. And the other thing that was a big challenge for us, how do you keep the connection alive? The connection at Starbucks was always built when you came into a store and the barista called out your name and your beverage, and then you felt that sense of connection. And we eventually, of course, innovated and did something which went on to become a global award-winning campaign, which was called the Barista Call-Out. And it was very simple. We realized that the stores may be shut, but social media is still on, and our consumers were missing Starbucks. So we did something very simple. We said, just tell us the name of your favorite beverage. And, we had lakhs of people just, send us messages. And our baristas would individually DM these customers with messages for their favorite beverages. So you'd have a message going to you saying, a tall Java Frappuccino for Pooja. And that's how we established connection, right? So scenario planning is really about having the agility and the will to be comfortable with multiple scenarios, because the future is not one. The future is going to be confusing and complex and many. My 5th and last mantra is make sus, delulu and hustle your besties. Make friends with ambiguity. It's a VUCA world, a world which is highly volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous. And here's where the innovation mindset mantra in terms of the mindset comes in. And there are 2 things. The first thing, how do you deal with ambiguity? Understand your assumptions. All of us have cognitive thinking, learning models that we are wired to, and we slip into a learning framework that we are comfortable with, right? Let me give you an example. A group of students was asked to run from point A to point B without their feet touching the ground. Everyone stood completely still, except this one girl who just sprinted across the room. And she said, well, you asked me that my feet should not touch the ground, right? I do have my shoes and socks on. Whereas all the others assumed that they have to do some magic trick and almost transpose themselves jumping from point A to point B. What are the assumptions you're making? What are the limiting beliefs or assumptions that are preventing you from dealing with ambiguity, dealing with uncertainty? I'm also currently learning improv comedy. And in improv, there is a beautiful style which essentially is called tap and freeze. So two people are called to the stage and a scene is created. And suddenly the moderator will say freeze. And two more people have to go there and recreate another scene exactly from the action point that the first has left off, right? So there are a lot of creative tools as well for you to hone this. So question your assumptions. And the second thing, I think this is the most important, build your perseverance muscle. And I want to say this especially to Gen Z because guys, do not get disheartened with failure. You will have hundreds of failures in life. You may have 1,000 failures a day. Do not get disheartened. I'll give you another example of an African tribe which was very famous because they were always called to bring in the rain, okay? And when somebody asked them, how do you guys manage to always bring the rain? And they, used to dance and it used to start raining. The chief of the tribe said, well, we dance till it rains. So I hope all of you dance till you rain. I want to end by, till it rains. I want to end by saying that I hope we've discussed today as part of the innovation mindset, a set of skill sets and the mindset for you to be able to decode the future. And since it's a Gen Z audience, I'd like to end by saying, get ready to slay the future. Thank you.